Think about a record so dominant in ultra running that it stood for almost 2 decades. Matt Carpenter's time, the Leadville 100.
And it wasn't just any race. You know, the Leadville 100, it's notorious, 100 miles through Colorado's mountains, high altitude. It's brutal terrain, unpredictable weather. A true test.
People have tried and failed, dramatically, to even touch Carpenter's time.
It was like a mental barrier for ultra runners.
So imagine, the shockwaves. When David Roche, a coach and a runner, known for his unique training, broke the record.
Not just broke it, shattered it.
Shattered it. It's a story that makes you wonder, how did he do it, and what can any of us learn from it? Even if, we're not planning on a 100-mile run anytime soon.
We'll get the science, the emotions, strategy, grit, the whole picture.
So let's start with David Roche. Now, this guy, he's not some, overnight sensation. He's got a long athletic journey. Didn't even start with running.
Right. College football, cycling, finally found his calling with running. And what's inspiring, it took him years to reach, elite level. It wasn't just talent. It was work, consistency over time.
This wasn't some natural-born runner story. This was years of dedication. It proves that consistent effort, even a little bit over time, it compounds. The greatest oak was once a little nut who held its ground. Okay, so let's zoom in. Leadville 100. Yeah. Even for someone who doesn't follow ultra running, this sounds insane. 100 miles, Colorado mountains. That's like what, fright marathons? Back to back?
It's a true mythic challenge, steeped in ultra running history. And like we said, previous attempts to break this record, they feel dramatically, like hours behind. So it makes you think, what makes this race so uniquely hard? So first you've got the altitude, 10,000 feet above sea level at the start. And it goes even higher, less oxygen. So even walking can feel tough. And then you've got the terrain, climbs, rocky trails, the weather. Changes constantly. Leadville throws everything at you.
Wow, it sounds like a test of your mind and your body. Makes you wonder, how do you even get ready for something like that?
Yeah.
So David Roche's approach, here's where it gets interesting. He didn't just focus on insane mileage like you think, for an ultra runner.
Right, that's one of the first things. That surprised me. He prioritized speed work, even hill sprints in his training.
Hill sprints? For a 100-mile race, that seems, counterintuitive. Why focus on speed when you're running, for a full day?
It's about the approach. Think of it like, imagine a car engine. A powerful engine, handles all terrain better, even slow climbs. Roche, his speed work, it's building that engine. It's about boosting overall running economy. By training his body to be more efficient, he's able to conserve energy over the long haul, even the toughest parts. And then he's got this N1 philosophy.
N1, what's that?
He tailors his training to his own strengths, recovery needs, doesn't follow trends or mimic, other runners.
We're all different. Our bodies respond differently. It's about finding what works for you.
And, it's not just the physical training. Roche, he put a lot of thought into his fueling strategy. And this is where it gets a little crazy.
Okay, this is the part I've been waiting for. I heard he got some inspiration from, a very unexpected source. Is it true? He was watching competitive eating.
You heard right. He studied competitive eaters to learn how they train their bodies to handle massive amounts of food.
That's kind of brilliant. When you think about it, ultra running, it's basically an eating contest with, some extreme mountain running. You need a ton of calories.
It's not just what you eat, it's training your gut to handle that intake. Over hours and hours, he knew he needed to turn his stomach into an elite athlete too. He did things like chugging, huge amounts of fluid during his runs, getting his body used to that feeling, fullness and discomfort. It all comes down to training your gut to handle the fuel you need, and that takes time and practice, just like anything else.
Okay, so Roche, he's put in the work, honed his speed, trained his gut like a champion. Now it's race day. He's at the starting line of this Leadville 100. What was going through his mind?
Well, he wasn't just aiming to survive, he was going for it right from the start. He trusted his training, his fuel plan, his body. And here's where his strategy gets even more fascinating. Instead of trying to push the pace early on, he ran most of the race at what's called a Zone 2 effort.
Zone 2? For Leadville? That's crazy. What does that even mean?
Zone 2, basically a conversational pace, a pace where you can still hold a conversation while running. Seems counterintuitive for Leadville, but there was a logic behind it. Running at a more sustainable pace. It allowed him to keep his heart rate lower, which meant he could keep up that high carb intake consistently No crashing, no bonking, just steady energy. It shows how important it is to have a plan, but also to be adaptable and adjust as things happen. You can't just, go out there and hammer the miles. You need strategy, especially at Leadville.
Okay, but let's be real. 100 miles, even at a talking pace, there's got to be some serious suffering. Tell me about the pain cave, because Roche, he has a unique perspective, I think, on that too.
Ah, yes. The pain cave, that moment where everything hurts, your body's screaming at you to stop, your mind starts playing tricks.
And Roche, he embraced it. He didn't see it as, like, defeat.
No, he saw it as discovery. He wanted to be stripped down to his core to see how he'd respond when all comfort was gone. He even said he wanted, the artifice of humanity ripped away. It's about resilience, finding that strength you didn't know you had. And it's in those moments of discomfort, vulnerability, that we grow the most, not just in sports, but life.
Okay, so back to the race. We left off with Roche strategically pacing himself in zone 2, building a pretty surprising lead in the first half. But 100 miles is a long way, and Leadville is notorious for throwing curveballs. What happened in the second half? Did he hit the wall? Did doubts, creep in?
Roche, battling fatigue, pushing through those moments where I think most people would break. But it's fascinating. He never seems to lose that sense of calm, focus. He keeps fueling, keeps moving, one step at a time.
And remember, this is after he's already run what most would consider an ultramarathon. I mean, can you imagine the mental strength to keep going?
It's mind-blowing.
Right. And this is where you see his philosophy, disrespect the distance, but respect your body. He's pushing his limits, but he's listening to his body, making sure he's fueling right and not pushing to the point of, breaking down.
This perfect balance between pushing hard and staying in control. And it's working. He's keeping his lead, even as others start to falter. But there's this one moment in the video near the end, and he's clearly exhausted, but he sees his crew, his supporters, and it's like this incredible surge of energy just comes over him. It's like he's tapping into this well of support and love, and it gives him that final push. It's a good reminder. We're not meant to do hard things alone. We need our people, our tribe, to help us through.
That moment, it captures everything, doesn't it? It's not just strength, it's resilience, planning, the power of human connection.
And there's another part of his strategy we haven't talked about, his use of heat training and sodium bicarbonate.
Oh, right. I read about that. He was basically prepping his body to handle the conditions by training in the heat on purpose.
Exactly. And the sodium bicarbonate, it's baking soda. It helps, buffer the lactic acid, which can delay fatigue. He was looking at every advantage, physical and mental.
So he's not just relying on grit. He's using science and strategy. He's treating his body like this high-performance machine.
And remember, he was even experimenting with ketones. That's another level of optimization.
It's clear that Roche, he's a student of the sport, constantly pushing the boundaries. He's not afraid to experiment, to try new things, which is something we can all learn from, even if we're not, elite athletes.
For sure. Whether it's a new workout, different productivity techniques, or just being open to new ideas, that willingness to step outside our comfort zone, that's usually where the growth is.
Okay, so the finish line. As incredible as this is, we know how it ends. David Roche crosses that line, shattering the record. That stood for almost 20 years.
And the look on his face, it's pure joy, relief, accomplishment. You can almost feel it through the screen. The weight of the race, the training, the battles, it all leads to this moment.
It's powerful. It makes you think. What was he thinking in that moment? What did he learn during those 100 miles of pushing himself?
In the post-race interview, he talks about gratitude, awe at what the body can do. He talks about community, the people who were there for him.
And he talks about the pain, the struggle, the doubt. He doesn't shy away, which I think is important because it reminds us that even the biggest achievements, they come with challenges and setbacks.
It's not about being superhuman. It's about being human with all our strengths and weaknesses and finding a way to embrace those weaknesses, use them to push us further.
All right, so the training, the race, the finish line, we've covered it. But I'm also here for the practical stuff. What can we, the listeners, learn from this?
Well, so many lessons. First, it's a reminder that we're capable of so much more than we think. We set limits based on our past, our fears, what society tells us. But this story, it shows us that those limits, they're usually self-imposed.
He rewrote the script, defined his own limits, and he didn't just break the record, he crushed it. It's inspiring to think maybe we can all push past those limits, even in small ways, and achieve things we never thought possible.
Absolutely. And it's not just physical stuff. It can be anything. Learning a skill, starting a business, overcoming something. It's about believing and having the courage to go for it.
And another thing, having a plan. Roche didn't just wing it. He planned. His training, his fueling, his race strategy, studied the course, analyzed himself, and made a plan to perform at his best.
And he wasn't afraid to experiment. The heat training, sodium bicarbonate, the ketones shows a willingness to think differently, to find new ways to get better.
Which is so valuable, right? We all get stuck in our ways. But sometimes the biggest changes come when we try something new, challenge our assumptions.
And, beyond the planning, the experimenting, there's a deeper lesson about mindset. Roche didn't just focus on the physical. He cultivated this mental toughness that allowed him to push through the pain, the doubt, the fatigue. And don't forget, enjoying the process, there's this joy and passion that comes through in the interviews, the video. Roche, he loves running, and that love fuels him.
It's a reminder that achieving our goals, it shouldn't be a grueling battle. It should be something we enjoy, something that gives us a sense of fulfillment.
And even with the intense training, he emphasized rest, recovery. He knew pushing too hard too often would lead to burnout, injury. He rested, listened to his body.
So it's balance, right? Pushing and resting, structure and flexibility, individual effort and support. It's about embracing the journey, the ups and downs, and finding the joy in becoming the best versions of ourselves. It's amazing, right? We've covered so much, but in a way, it feels like we've only just scratched the surface. David Roche's Leadville win. It's not just about the record. It's like this blueprint for any challenge in life.